so much fun to read everybody's response, and then you actually see the person and you go, okay, now I can put a name with a face. So if we can start over with Anna, that would be great. I know I'm in a different order on my screen than you are, but Anna's the farthest to my left, so go ahead, Anna.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Anna. I'm from Oregon. Joining an earlier time. I know it's late for you guys, but
it is. It's getting to be bedtime around here. Thanks, Anna. All right, and Dan, would you mind going next? Just unmute yourself there. I don't know if Dan heard me there.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Dan Hawkins, I'm in beautiful Boise, Idaho.
All right, thanks, Dan. All right, Liz?
I'm Liz from Minneapolis.
All right, thanks. And Michael?
Mike from Denver, Colorado.
All right. Robert, Bob, there you are.
Hi, Bob from Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
All right. And then Ron?
Well, I have to do it. Howdy, y'all. I'm Ron from Houston, Texas.
It's about time. We have all these trainers from Texas, and nobody has that big southern drawl. So
I've acquired it. It's not natural. I will tell you that right now.
All I need is about an hour in Texas, and I start saying y'all. I pick it up very quickly. Ruben, go ahead. I don't know if everybody knows you.
Ruben Nieves, Director of Training. I'm in Clovis, California.
All right. Thank you. And next, I think Sean is next on my lineup here. Can you hear us, Sean?
Sorry, that broke up for a second.
No problem.
I'm Sean from Columbus, Ohio. I apologize, my screen's so dark. I'm going to work on getting that fixed here.
No worries. We're good. And Terry.
Hey, everybody. Terry Hymas, Katy, Texas, right outside of Houston.
All right. I hear a little southern drawl on you, too, I think. I do. And I think, Laura, you jumped in.
Yeah, hi. I'm Laura. I'm from Denver.
All right. Did I miss anybody? I don't think I missed anyone. All right. Thanks, everybody. This is great to have you all here. Before I get started, just a couple things. If you're not familiar with the Google Hangout, sometimes we get booted off in the evening. Sometimes I don't for some reason, but if you're ever on a Google Hangout and I happen to just get booted off or you get booted off, just join right back in again. It works well that way. When we have a lot of people, it is helpful if you mute. Right now, not everybody's muted and I don't hear a lot of background noise, so that's fine. But sometimes there's background noise and the Google Hangout picks up whose ever voice is loudest. So that's who comes up on the big screen. So if you're not speaking, feel free to mute. And then if you want to talk or ask a question, feel free to unmute. The other thing I want to start off with saying how it's just been, I have been taking notes. I don't know if you all have been taking notes, but I've been taking notes like crazy on your discussion question answers because it's great stuff. And I'm like writing down quotes and I'm writing down ideas. And I can't stress enough, this is one of the only opportunities before you become a certified trainer for you to share ideas with people. I love to say that when you become a PCA trainer, you're going to have this wealth of resources and people at your fingertips, which you will, but it doesn't always happen in this simple of an environment. It's kind of hard to track down people's stories. So use this 6-week time as an opportunity to really just learn from each other and pick up sport examples. I had somebody, I just came from a workshop this afternoon. I was in Maryland, and I was bringing up a point about ELM Tree of Mastery, and this one guy said, I wrote crew. Can you give me an example for crew? And I was like, a year ago, I would have been like, I gotta think of a crew example here. And I just did the U.S. rowing workshop a couple weeks ago, and I got all my crew questions answered. So, I was able to help this kid who really couldn't figure out, certain effort goals in his sport. So it really does help. We don't ask you to be an expert in every sport, but it really does help to have a little bit of a background. So feel free to take notes. Before we get started again, are there any questions that anyone has at this point in the course for the good of the cause before I jump right into ELM Tree of Mastery? All right. Okay. And Angel, I think you just jumped in. Hi, Angel. How are you?
Hi, Russ.
And just tell us all where you're from.
I'm from Atlanta.
All right. Thanks. Okay. Well, then what I'm going to do, I'm going to finish up the last 5 steps of the smack recipe that we started last week. And then I'm going to model the ELM Tree of Mastery portion of the workshop. And then the last, hopefully I'll give you a lot more time than I did last week. I'm going to let you kind of share your ideas and ask your questions. And you know, the ELM Tree of Mastery, I think, has some fantastic stories that go along with it, because it's sort of the biggest aha moment in our workshops, when coaches kind of know what they've been doing all along, but they don't put it into real clear terms. So I love this, I love all the portions of the workshop, but I love this part of the workshop because it's very concrete, it's very simple, and it's proven with research backed by coaches that have been coaching this way for many, many years. And this is where I find the audience kind of perks up, like, wow, this is great, I never thought about this. Or so I love this part. So I'm going to model it first, and then at the end, I will allow you a chance to ask questions, share ideas, whatever you need to do. So without further ado, if you have a question at all, just flag me down, wave your hand, and then I can call on you at any point. But we're going to start off with the smack recipe. Again, you all should have this, or you have access to it in the Google Drive. And this is, again, borrowed from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. This is our system of steps, 11 key steps to great PCA workshops and how to do them. You all put on your own flair onto these workshops, your own style and your own passion. But if you follow these 11 steps, this is sort of the framework that we would expect from every trainer. So I'm not going to go through each of them in detail like I did last week, but I'll just go through the first 6. The first one was know your content cold. Second one, reach out to the partner ahead of time. Third, arrive early. Fourth was be game ready. Fifth, start smoothly or start with a bang. Sixth is involve and validate participants. And then today we're going to go on to number 7. Number 7 is make the book a lasting resource. This book is a product that we sell, and the partner managers for PCA spend a lot of time and energy selling this as an extra resource for the partners. And I think, if any, I mean, you've all read it, but I just have found myself going back to it and referencing it so many times. I've heard coaches say this is their Bible. They've read it back to front and front to back. It's a very quick and easy read. I always joke that if you don't think you'll be able to read it in one sitting, stick it in the bathroom and it'll get read in about 3 days. But it's just something that has a lot of concrete examples, and it really clearly illustrates all of the principles. There's no way in a 90-minute workshop that we can go through every single page in this book. So it's a resource that you send them home with. And it also has, you know, numbers and website information and all of that on it too. So there's nothing worse than a trainer that goes through an entire workshop and doesn't reference the book, and then at the end hands them out and says, okay, here's a book for you. Good luck. I really like throughout the course of the workshop, when you look in the PowerPoint, there are page numbers referenced, and I like to have them open up and not necessarily read them page by page, but at least let them know where they can dog-ear pages, or they can highlight or circle or take notes. This is not necessarily a workbook, but I might have them go through and open up to a certain page and say, okay, read that for me, read that example there, explain to me how that works, or read this quote on page 30 or whatever it is. Just to let them know the cool stuff that's in the book. Have them open it up at least 2 or 3 times throughout the workshop. Number 8 step is to hone your stories. I think over the course of, even since I've been doing this since 2009, the workshops have really come a long way in terms of, I think when I first started, of course it was PowerPoint, there were no videos, it was a lot of information, and I think our workshops tended to be a lot more driven by information and lecturing. And over the last, I know at least 5 years or 6 years since I've been here, we've really changed them to be so much more interactive. And when I talk to an audience and I say, what did you remember most about the workshop? Or what did you connect with the most? 99% of the time, people say the stories. The trainer's stories were fantastic. I really could relate to that. Because, you know, most people are so used to PowerPoints, they have them at work, in the workplace or school or wherever they are, and they want to hear this come to life. And people can make a concept real to them if they can picture an athlete or a player or yourself going through it. So storytelling is an art, as you know. And storytelling is something, we say hone your stories. The descriptor says practice your stories so you can hit the key points in less than 60 seconds. Now, if any of you know me, I cannot tell a story in 60 seconds. Not a good story anyway. But it's something good to shoot for. And to make the point of the story within 60 seconds, that I can do. So I've heard people that have had this fantastic story and it takes 4 minutes for them to get to the point. So something that I would challenge you, if you have a great story for each one of these principles, either based on your own experience as an athlete or as a coach or from someone else that you've borrowed their story. Try to get to the point quickly within about 60 seconds, but don't be afraid to use details to make us feel like we're there, feel the emotion of the story. If you tell this story, you can do it to yourself. You can videotape yourself, tell it in front of a mirror, have your friends and children and spouses sit down and hear the story. If you find yourself telling a story and it takes longer than 3 or 4 minutes to tell, push yourself to try to do it in less. Now tell the story again in 2 minutes. And then push yourself even more. Can you tell us the same story in 1 minute? And you would be surprised how simple it is to cut a 4 or 5 minute story down to only 1 minute. Because you can get to the point quicker, and you can, even when you watch yourself tell it, we want you to make sure that you're getting to the point, because storytelling is something that is a wonderful connector, but you can also lose an audience in storytelling. So practice, practice, practice. All right, number 9, addressing the role of winning. We already talked about that from the get-go. We've talked about how PCA is definitely not soft. It's definitely not non-competition. We are a very competitive group. We do value winning, probably above all else. When you would ask any of the people that work for PCA, we're very competitive, winning-driven people. However, we understand that there's a right way to do it, and that teaching the life lessons and character development are the more important thing. But get that out of the way right off the bat. Clear up those myths. Number 10, end early with a honed finish. So as I said, today I had a workshop. I was slotted about 1 hour and 20 minutes. And by the time I got there and the kids, it was an athlete workshop, by the time the kids got into the auditorium, I was ready to go a half an hour before the workshop. By the time the kids trickled into the workshop and the principal came down to introduce me, my workshop that was 120 minutes was now cut down to about 55 minutes. And then the principal had this wonderful introduction about Positive Coaching Alliance that took about 5 minutes. And then by that time, he finally read my biography, which took about 30 seconds. So by the time it was finished, I had about 50 minutes to do the entire 120-minute workshop. That being said, I ended still 2 minutes early, because it's not anyone in the audience's fault that the workshop got started late. So I always recommend, we actually don't recommend, we demand, we expect that you always finish on time, if not a few minutes early. And the end of a workshop really needs to summarize everything in a workshop. When you get to the end, especially as a new trainer, and you realize, oh my gosh, I haven't even gotten to honor the game yet, and I have 7 seconds left or 7 minutes left in my workshop. Keep in mind that, obviously we want you to pace it better the next time, but no one in the audience knows what you're going to be talking about. So rather than clicking and vomiting, I call it, just click and spit, click and spit, click and spit. That's not what we want you to do. We want you to end as calmly and confidently as you started. So pick some key points and make sure you wrap up the workshop in the same tone and the same pace that you started it out with. Hopefully you're more energetic and more excited, but we don't want you to click and spit the last 10 slides just to get them in. I'd rather you just tell a story about honoring the game that illustrates much more than going through each of them quickly. So keep that in mind as well. And the last one is send sign-ins and evaluations promptly to PCA. So at the end of every workshop, you also have to give yourself about 5 minutes to have everyone in the audience open up to the back page of their book and fill out an evaluation. And those evaluations get collected, and you mail them in to PCA along with your trainer invoice, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So you do have to leave time for that. So when you're doing a workshop and it's over at 9 o'clock, don't talk about, don't keep continuing the workshop until 8:59, because you do need time to do the evaluations and send them in as well. The evaluations are also a good way to get referrals. On the back of the evaluation page, it says if you know any other organizations that would benefit from our message, please write down the contact information. So those are the steps, clean and simple. You all can handle those. Any questions about the SMAC recipe before I jump into ELM Tree of Mastery? No? All right. Okay, well, I'm going to jump right in then, and let me make sure you guys can all see this. All right, now, what I'm going to do is treat this as if it were a live workshop. So you guys are now my audience. You're a bunch of youth sports coaches, multi-sport, whatever sport you coach is fine with me. I am going to ask you some questions, so if you could help me out a little bit, just pretend you're my audience, and I know with the muting and unmuting it's a little weird, but raise your hand and I'll call on you. All right, so last week we ended here with the intro to the workshop. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to start from here and move on to the first principle and the transition. All right, Everybody good? All right, trainer mode, you're now an audience. All right, now, so these principles that we talked about are the 3 principles that run throughout every workshop that we do. And the first one is called the ELM Tree of Mastery. The goal of the ELM Tree of Mastery principle is peak performance, plain and simple. We want your athletes to perform at their best. And we're going to give you some strategies on how to do that. The second principle is called filling the emotional tank. That principle we use with every workshop that we do. Filling the emotional tank has to do with getting the athletes in the right frame of mind so that they're able to be coachable. And they're going to be in the greatest learning environment possible so they can also perform at their best. And the last one is called honoring the game. The goal of that principle is character development, yes. Sportsmanship, yes. But we raise the bar. We set the bar high in our culture to show the kids that the game is a lot bigger than that one moment they're playing. And we set a standard of respect for 5 different areas of the game that we're going to talk about so that it takes all the gray areas out of coaching and it makes it very simple for you. So these are the 3 principles that run throughout our athlete, parent, coach, and leadership workshops. And today we're going to start off with the ELM Tree of Mastery. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a quick video clip from the movie We Are Marshall. Now this is based on a true story that happened back in the 70s at Marshall University out in West Virginia. How many of you are familiar with this movie? All right, some of you are. Okay. Well, what I want you to look, I don't want you to worry too much about the details of the movie right now, but what I want you to do when you watch this video, this is a halftime speech. You can feel the tension in the room. It's a tight football game. This is a pretty successful football team. And what I want you to do is I want you to listen to this coach and how he speaks to his players. And he's a coach trying to motivate his players. What I want you to think about is what is this coach using to motivate his players?
Fellas, it's a good effort out there today. Let me be clear about this. A good effort is not enough. Now, I'm proud of it. But I will not accept losing with you. Because there's only one thing they judge us on. There's only one thing people remember. And it ain't how we play the game. Winning is everything.
That guy has some passion. Anybody have a coach that reminds you of him? Yeah, I've had them too. That coach was really trying to motivate his players right there. And if I were to ask you coaches, what did that coach say that you think was a strong positive? What was that coach doing well in that speech? You guys can unmute if you want to. Did you pick out something he did well?
Yeah, I thought his tone it came through and really showed the passion he had towards coaching his players.
Excellent. So his tone of voice, he was very emotional and passionate. I agree, Bob. Thanks. What's something else you noticed that he said to his players that you would say, yeah, that was pretty good. That was pretty motivational.
He emphasized effort.
You gave a good effort out there. So that's good. He was noticing the effort. He also said he was proud of them. That's a great thing for a player to hear. And I'm proud of you. Then he put in a little 3-letter word, but. What was the end of that sentence after he said the but? But he will not what? Anybody catch it?
He will not lose with you.
Right. He will not accept losing with you. So if I were to ask you from a coach-to-coach point of view, what is the tactic that that coach is using to motivate his team? What would you say? What's his strategy to get his team fired up?
Fear.
Fear, exactly. He's using fear as a motivator. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to give you some details from a study that was done, a pretty interesting study that was done in the year 2000. And this study was done based on different styles of coaching. What we would call this coach that you just saw in the clip, we would call that a scoreboard-focused coach. He was really, his big focus was on the winning. That was the most important thing to him and the outcome of the game. He was proud of them. He did think they gave good effort, but he wasn't going to lose with them because winning is everything. We call that a scoreboard-focused coach. Some of us call that a win-at-all-cost coach. What Joan Duda did in her study was she found that there are 2 different styles of coaching. One is for the style of coach that focuses only on the scoreboard and winning. The other one are coaches that focus on mastering their sport and getting better, more task-oriented. Now, the interesting thing about this study was at the end of the Olympics, when she did the medal count and totaled up the medals, Take a guess which ones earned more medals. Was it the ones that were focusing on winning in the scoreboard, or was it the ones that were focusing on mastering their sport and getting better? If you think it's the ones that focused on winning in the scoreboard, I want you to put up a W. If you think it's the ones that were focusing on mastering their sport and getting better, I want you to flip it down to an M for mastery. Teach a little sign language here. Winning or mastery? What do you think? 1, 2, 3, vote. Yes, you're all smart, good students. You tell me what I want to hear. Now, what I want you to do is turn to the person next to you and tell them why. Why, if you don't focus on winning, do you win more games? Okay, so I'm going to have you take 30 seconds to turn to the person next to you and tell them why. So, you would all talk amongst yourselves, blah, 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 for 30 seconds. Can I have one of you just volunteer to give me an answer that you might say? Why do you think those who focus on mastering their sport would actually win more medals? Pretend you were talking to a partner.
Effort.
Laura, go ahead.
When you focus on the scoreboard, you're focusing on things that you can't control.
Oh, very good. Yeah. Good answer. Good answer. Anyone else have anything to add to what Laura said? Focusing on things you can't control. What else?
Focusing on mastery, you consistently get better every time. So no matter what the result is, there's always an opportunity to make yourself better. And so you just can consistently get a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. Then over time, that adds up to a lot more than simply did I win or did I lose every single event.
Okay, so it sounds like you're kind of competing against yourself and looking for improvement as well. Excellent. Okay, well, this is another clip from the same movie. And those of you that are familiar with the movie, unfortunately, the first team that you saw and the coach perished in a fatal plane crash. So this new coach, Jack Lengyel, had to take over with a team that did not have a lot of football skills. And he had to build a team from nothing. So here is the speech that he uses to motivate his players, knowing that many of the teams that they play against, winning is not going to be probably an option for them. So I want you to listen to how he motivates his players. Excuse the Hollywood music.
I want to talk about our opponent this afternoon. They're bigger, faster, stronger, more experienced, and on paper, they're just better. And they know it too. But I want to tell you something that they don't know. They don't know your heart. I do. I've seen it. You have shown it to me. You have shown this coaching staff, your teammates. You have shown yourselves just exactly who you are in here. When you take that field today, you've got to lay that heart on the line, man. From the soles of your feet, with every ounce of blood you've got in your body, lay it on the line until the final whistle blows. And if you do that, we cannot lose. We may be behind on the scoreboard at the end of the game, but if you play like that, we cannot be defeated.
So where's his goal? If you play like that, you cannot lose. We may be behind on the scoreboard, but we cannot be defeated. What's he using to motivate his players?
Effort.
Effort. Okay, he's using effort. He's telling them to play with their heart. He's not focusing on the outcome of the game because he knows they probably won't win. But he's focusing on their heart and he's focusing on their effort. So the first principle we illustrate here is called the ELM Tree of Mastery. Now, how many of you have a sports psychologist on staff with your teams? Okay, many of us don't. I know I didn't. When I first started coaching my 6-year-old Pee Wee soccer players, I wished I had a sports psychologist on staff. So what we're bringing you here is research-based from sports psychologists all over the country. And the coolest thing about this is, if anyone knows anything about psychology, there's always some kind of a controversy. This is non-controversial, that coaching with a mastery definition of success, a mastery definition of winning, and playing with a mastery definition of winning will actually help athletes perform better. That brightened me up right away when I heard there was a way that I could get my little athletes to actually play better, and it was this simple. Let me show you why. A clear-cut example. So the scoreboard definition, the very first coach, people that are only focusing on winning, they're focusing on the results. Where mastery definition of success, coaches are coaching in a mastery environment, they're focusing on effort. Well, the reason that that's so simple is because the results of the game are totally out of our control, as Laura said. What other factors in a game are completely out of our control as coaches? Let's see if we can name 5 things in any given game or contest, any sport, that are out of our control.
Weather.
Weather, officials, I heard those 2.
Injuries.
Injuries.
The other team.
The other team, absolutely.
Fans.
Fans. So all of those things that we as coaches and teams focus on are the results. They're out of our control. Let's talk about effort for a second. Is effort within an athlete's control? Yes or no? Absolutely. Now, results we know can be measured. Results can be measured very easily. Did we win? Did we lose? Did we go faster? Did we not go faster? How do we measure effort? How do we measure effort? I'm going to ask you this time, instead of talking to the person next to you, I'm going to ask you to turn to the person behind you or in front of you, and I want you to think, how do you measure effort with your specific sport and your specific team? Okay, take a minute because you're each going to get to share this one. Go ahead. And you talk amongst yourselves. Can I have an example from one of you with the sport that you coach? Give me an effort, some way you can measure the effort in your sport.
How many 50-50 balls we get a hand on?
I like it. How many 50-50 balls do you get a hand on? Now, did you listen to Bob? Did he say how many 50-50 balls we have possession of? Nope. He said how many we get a hand on. What's another effort goal?
In volleyball, just getting a touch on a ball.
Excellent.
So not watching a ball drop.
Good. Getting a touch on it. Okay, that's effort. That shows hustle. Absolutely. What else?
In baseball, making contact with the ball even though you may not put it in play.
Excellent. At least we made contact. Can you keep track of those things as a coach? Yes, you can. Last year I had 12-year-olds playing lacrosse. And in lacrosse at the young age, we want these girls to be able to switch hands from their not dominant side to their non-dominant side. I had 12-year-olds that were constantly playing with their dominant hand, and they weren't switching hands. And they were so worried because they were worried they were going to drop the ball every time they had it in there. So I told the girls that I was going to be keeping track of how many times they switched hands. I didn't care if the ball fell out. And I called them stars when they did that, and I had a bag of Starburst. Every game I would bring a bag of Starburst, and I would just keep track of how many times they switched hands. And the very first game, I had about 8 girls that consistently would switch hands. So at halftime, I would give out the Starburst to the 8 girls. That's all I focused on. Did you switch hands? By the end of the second game where I instituted this Starburst policy, I had all 21 girls switching hands at least 2 or 3 times for every game. And I don't know about you, but to me, that was worth the $2.29 bag of Starburst for every single game. They were so excited and fired up, and the cooler thing was they were pointing it out at each other. Did you see her switch hands? Did you see her switch hands? And they were starting to shoot with their opposite hand, and they were starting to dribble and do all these cool things with opposite hands. It was so cool. So that's how you measure effort. Now, next one, comparing with others. I don't know about you, but my very first couple years of coaching, I thought it was motivating to tell my team that, you know what, guys, I know that team seems stronger, I know they seem faster, but you guys are going to be better than they are. I thought that was motivating to them. I was comparing my team to the others, but then telling them they were still going to win. And I didn't know if they were going to win or not. What I was forgetting about was the learning. Okay, so we call the mastery definition focus on the learning. How many of you have ever had a game or a contest or a meet or a match that you've gone into and you've thought as a coach, this one's in the bag? I'm not going to tell my team that, of course, but I have a feeling that we're going to win this one just because I know the other team pretty well. And you went into the game with all these confident hopes, and the team was all excited and ready because maybe you crushed them in the last contest or last game. And all of a sudden your team gets out there and they're making mistakes left and right. And you're like, oh my gosh, who is this team we're playing? What is going on right now? Your team played down to the level of the competition. Anybody with me here? Anybody ever had that happen? Yeah. What's the opposite that happens, that is what we want to happen? When you go into a game and you know you're playing against the undefeated team, you know they've crushed you in the last couple weeks at competitions, and you go in and you're nervous because you're thinking, oh, this is going to be a rough one, I know it. And all of a sudden your players are on fire, and they are playing their butts off, and they are working so hard, and it's like all of a sudden it all comes together, and they remembered, even win or loss, they came really close because they gave it their heart. That is called learning. So I don't know about you, but I know for me as a coach, that's what I want to see every single time. I want to see that fire in their belly. I love it when they think they're not going to win, and all of a sudden they're on fire and they're excited. That's what learning is all about. So as coaches, let's not compare ourselves to the other teams. Let's just focus on, what did you learn from that person that just cut you off and blew the other way? What did you learn from that girl that just out-touched you at the wall? What did you learn from that kid that made that wrestling move on you and pinned you in the very first 5 seconds of the match. Tell me, what did you learn from them? That is called mastery, because it makes it an opportunity to get better for each person. Now, the last one, mistakes. This is my favorite. Scoreboard definition coaches make it very clear that mistakes are not okay. You are my coach. I am playing basketball. Let's just make it a simple example. I go up for the shot, the foul shot, actually. I'm not even going up for a jumper. I'm going up for a foul shot, totally uncontested here. There's not much time in the game. And I take the shot, and it's an air ball. You're my coach. I want you to show me non-verbally right now your reaction to me missing that shot if you're a scoreboard-focused coach and mistakes are not okay. Are you ready? Shot, turn, coach, show me. Oh, your faces are only this big, and I still feel the sadness in you. Oh, the faces, right. Mistakes are not okay at all. Now, next time I get an opportunity to shoot, how am I going to feel? Somebody tell me how I'm feeling as an athlete. Now that I know my coach is disappointed in me.
Tight.
How's it going to affect my playing? I'm going to be tight. What else?
Scared.
Yeah, scared, unconfident. Absolutely. Mistakes are okay. Now, coaches, we're in the development zone, remember. We're all about learning from mistakes. As far as I know, the 10-year-olds that you're coaching are not being paid and do not have a contract yet. So when they make mistakes, we've got to help them realize that mistakes are the lifeblood of learning. This is how you get better. So as a coach, I just made the same shot. I blew it. I missed. I'm the same athlete. I turn around now and look at you. Now, what's your face doing? Show me. If mistakes are okay. All right. And I'm going, why is my coach clapping for me? I just missed that shot. What is going on? Coaches, I want you to turn to the person that you just spoke to in front or behind you, and I want you to give them advice. They are the player that just missed. Give them that positive coaching advice that tells them that it's okay that they made a mistake. Go. Just one sentence, and then you share, and then you share, and then you share. Somebody share for me. I'm the athlete. I just messed up. What would you tell me as a coach to let me clear message that mistakes are okay? Tell me.
It's all right. You've got the next one. It's yours.
Good. He's letting me move on to the next play. You've got the next one. It's yours. Good advice, Ron. What's another bit of advice you could give me? Somebody else besides Ron.
Focus on the process. Don't worry about the result.
Okay, I'm like 9. I have no clue what that means. Be more specific.
So do what you have learned, how we taught you to do it, and just focus on that, and everything else will take care of itself.
Be more specific. What did you tell me to do? That I did well.
Remember your form.
Okay, my form. My form might have been good. I might have had a good follow-through on my shot. If I was able to even get a shot off, what did I do well, Coach? Coach Mike, what did I do well if I was even able to take a shot?
I guess I'm having trouble dealing with 9-year-olds, but what did you do well?
What did I do well?
Your form was good. Your form was good, and we'll just keep on working on it, and it will come.
All right, awesome. I had great form. I hustled to the ball. I dribbled down the court. I got open for the shot. There are so many things I did well. Coaches, let's focus on those things, because we all know, and research has shown to us, the #1 impediment to peak performance is fear of, everybody?
Failure.
Fear of failure, fear of mistakes. So if we want to stop our athletes from playing their best, we want to send a message to them that it's not okay that they just made a mistake. If we want them to improve, we've got to show them that mistakes are okay. The reason being, in this mastery climate, we have anxiety and self-confidence, okay? We want players that have high anxiety, low self-confidence, or low anxiety, high self-confidence. I think y'all want the anxiety to be where? Anxiety to be low. Right, and we want the self-confidence to be high. In this environment, they can be, because the ELM tree, ELM, E, effort, L, learning, M, mistakes are okay, will create that where anxiety is low, self-confidence is high. Players are going to take risks. They're going to have fun out there because of what Laura said in the very, very beginning, because this gives players a feeling of, what Laura said was, control. When you're in control, you have high confidence because you are the one that can change it. All right, now let's make this real. Here's what happens. I want you to imagine that Jesse's on your team. Jesse hangs his head every time he misses a shot is our example. Take your sport. If it misses a hit, misses a bat, misses a race, whatever it is that you coach. Jesse hangs his head every time he misses a shot, and as a result does not get back on defense. Okay, you know the kid. You've seen him. He missed, his head's down, he's beating himself up longer than he should. The next play is going right by him, and he's still upset with himself. Maybe he looked up at the stands and he looked at Dad, and Dad's shaking his head and doing one of these. He's not ready to move on to the next play because we know that's the most important play. So, coaches, what I'm going to ask you to do is this. I'm going to ask those of you that coach kids that are 8-year-olds and 8-year-old and below, I'm going to ask you to go to this corner. Coaches that coach 10, like between, actually 12 to 8-year-olds, I'm going to ask you to go to this corner. Those of you that are coaching 12 to 15-year-olds in this corner, and anybody that's coaching 15-year-olds and above are going to go to this corner, and I want you to discuss when you get there as a group how you would handle this as a coach. How would you coach up Jesse so that he's ready to move on? And think about that mastering environment. Okay, I'm going to give each group 2 minutes to talk about this, and then I'm going to ask one spokesperson from each group to share with the group. And the spokesperson is going to be the person whose birthday is closest to today. All right, go. So you're all going to get up. You're going to go to different parts of the room. You've got 2 minutes on the clock. You're going to introduce yourself. The first thing that you're always going to do is find out whose birthday is closest to today, because that's the most nerve-wracking question for everybody. So you've got your spokesperson. You talk as a group about how you're going to do this. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask this group over here, any of you in the audience right now that are coaching kids 8-year-old and below, how would you handle 8-year-old Jesse or 6-year-old Jesse? Coach, give me a bit of advice. Any of you out there that might have ever coached these young little ones. What would you tell Jesse? Somebody can just pretend if you want to pretend. Feel free.
I've coached him in football and in baseball. I'm just going to build them up. I want to help them get their head up. I'm going to do as much as I can to get them having fun in the moment and to try to forget about what happened and focused on moving forward.
All right. I like the word fun. And you're going to get them hyped up and you're going to pump them up. Group over there that's coaching a little bit older, any of the other 3 groups, would that work for your age group? Would that work for the older kids? Yeah, absolutely. All right, somebody that's coaching middle school age, like 10 to 12-year-olds. Give me advice. How would you handle 10 to 12-year-old Jesse? You guys can make something up.
I would tell them, hey, here's an idea. We have this thing called a mistake ritual. And what I want you to do is we're going to come up with some little physical thing that you do, and you do it quickly, and that's going to help us get past that and on to the next play.
That is a brilliant idea, Mike. I wish I had thought of that. That's awesome. A mistake ritual, and you're going to use that with your whole team. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. We're going to share some mistake rituals. Other age groups, do you think a mistake ritual might work for your age level? Yeah, I think it sounds like a great idea. Okay, you guys get the idea. We'll have the older kids share. Somebody, though, in the group, I would like somebody in the group that coaches kids older than age 15, high school level and above. Tell me how you would handle Jesse.
Yeah, I would tell them, hey, next time that shot comes up, you better take it again. And don't worry. And the next time after that, and the next time after that. Because if I didn't have confidence you'd make it, I wouldn't have you out there.
Wow. I like that. I'm pumped up. If I didn't have confidence in you, I wouldn't have you out there. He just showed that he believes in him, and he wants him to go back there and get him another try. If you're,
I tell him that's, we practice those shots, and that's why when it comes time for game time, that's why we practice those in practice. And with all the teams I've coached, especially on the pro level, guys knew that if they're open and they didn't shoot it, they were coming out of the game.
Good. But it wasn't contingent upon whether they sunk the shot. It was just contingent upon whether they took the shot.
They had to take it. I didn't care if they made it, but they were taking it. And it hurt us if they didn't, because everyone on the team thought that they were going to take it, and because of that, would go to the offensive glass. So it was part of our strategy, and we put in the work beforehand by the practice that we put in. And through the practice, they got their confidence, and then if they made it, they made it. If they didn't, we move on to the next play.
I like it, Bob. Thank you. I once had a coach pull me out of a game. I was a sophomore playing varsity in basketball. He pulled me out. It was the end of the quarter, and he got us in the huddle, and I was feeling bad. I missed the last 3 shots in a row as a sophomore. And he said to the team, guys, Kelly is working her butt off to get these shots off to give you guys rebound practice. Can we please help her out a little bit? And that just made my day. I was like, he didn't even focus on the fact that I missed. He was thanking me for giving the team rebounding practice.
There you go.
I'll never forget it. Ruben, did you have a comment to make?
Yeah. I like what Bob said about, you move on to the next play. And I guess what I would add, and I'm sure, Bob, you did this, that after an opportunity or two to do it that way, if the athlete did indeed not move on to the next play, then someone else was in there for them, and that athlete was, going to sit next to you and think about how they might hustle back on defense. And I think, Kelly, I think this is what you wanted to draw out of us. I'm guessing that that a lack of effort is not okay. The E in ELM stands for effort, and so in this situation, the athlete is demonstrating a lack of effort. And granted, how you respond to that with a 6-year-old might be different than a 15-year-old, but ultimately, I think a positive coach does hold players accountable for effort, which is something that they can control, especially as they get older.
Exactly. And Ruben, that's actually how I wrap up. When you talk about a scoreboard-focused coach versus a mastery-focused coach, and some people say, well, if you're only talking about their effort, you're not really focusing on the results, that's a little soft, that's a little easy. But I beg to differ with you, because holding a player accountable for effort, I'm not saying you keep the player in if they're making mistake after mistake after mistake if the effort is not there. We do have to coach these players, but holding a player accountable for effort is actually a harder job for a coach to do, and it pays off dividends. So coaches, you're holding them to a high standard. Sometimes teams play their hardest and they don't win. As coaches, are we pleased with that? Yeah. Sometimes teams play with little or no effort and they win. A scoreboard-focused coach would be pleased with that. Personally, I'm not pleased with that. I want my team to practice maximum effort every single time. Angel, question?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and Ruben kind of beat me to it, but I was going to say for my collegiate athletes, a lot of times after practice, I always ask them if they make a mistake and they're walking away, whether it's not, getting a 50-50 ball or making a free throw or whatever the case may be, or not transitioning back. The question that I always ask them is, did you give your all in that moment? Are you satisfied with the effort that you gave? And 9 times out of 10, they see where they could have probably given a little bit more. And so, like you just said, just holding themselves accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Angel. All right, so folks, we're going to move on to the next principle, and the next principle is has to do with how full your tanks are. So I'm going to stop there for right now so that we have a good 15 minutes at the end of this call. What I would like to do is give you the opportunity to A, ask a question if you have any questions about this principle, B, make a comment, meaning, Kelly, I like what you did, or I didn't like that, or that didn't connect with me, or, whatever you need to do. You can give me feedback that will help the group. That's fine too. And number 3, I'd like to know an example maybe from your experience. How would you illustrate this point? What are some things you would do? All right, so I'm going to let all of you have an opportunity, but I am just going to open it up to whoever would like to start us off first. But let this be your chance to share. Let's get some ideas going.
I have a question.
Sure.
So for the slide with the hockey player giving and the quote about making the shot, and I guess this goes for your stories as well. If you have a diversity of kind of sports to share within your stories, do you think it's worthwhile to kind of make changes either in the slides, or I don't know if that's even possible, but with your stories based on who your audience is?
Absolutely. My answer is 100% yes. You do have the flexibility to change pictures on the slides and to change some of the wording on the slides. So if I know I'm doing a workshop with just soccer coaches, we actually have a double goal coach 1 version just for soccer. That's all soccer coaches. And we have a version that's just all baseball for Little League coaches. But let's say you're doing a lacrosse workshop, or as I did a crew workshop. So I had to change this scenario to fit crew and rowing. So, I went on Google. I picked a different picture that we actually have a database of pictures, too, that you can use. picked a different picture, changed the wording, the scenario, still to equal the same thing. But yes, anything you can do to connect to your audience better, I would highly recommend. Good question.
I have a question, Kelly.
Sure.
Kind of about from the first part of the Hangout tonight with the smack recipe about the stories.
Yep.
Can you hear me okay?
I can. We can't see you, but we can hear you. We're fine.
Oh, sorry about that. What if you aren't confident in like a diverse group of stories to share? You know, I am younger, and I'm sure people I would be training with have a lot more experience and stories than I do. So what if you don't fully feel comfortable with a lot of your stories to share?
Okay, I would like somebody from the audience to answer that, because there is going to be a time when you're asked a question or you're supposed to give an illustration and you have nothing. What do? Ron?
You call upon your audience. Hey, does
Exactly.
anyone have a relationship or a connection to this content where this resonates with you at this time? Anything that you can apply that you can share with the rest of the group?
Absolutely. That's probably your saving grace at any workshop. You're still the expert in the room to be able to ask someone, you know what, I would love to hear an example from, let's say somebody asked you about, squash or something and you have no familiarity with it. Is there someone in the room that can give us an example in your sport? I'm the first person as a trainer to admit that I don't know every sport. So sometimes it buys me some time. Sometimes it is a sport I know and I'm just not ready to give an answer yet. So I'd like to hear from some people in the room to see what they think. I do that very often, and it's really effective.
Okay.
And again, I think it's better to admit that you don't know something than to pretend that you do, and have people look at you like she has no clue what she's talking about. So, I'm the first one to say I have never played tackle football. So when I'm in front of football coaches, I almost poke fun of myself, like, I don't even know the terms. I watch it, but I really, you got to help me with this here. Use this concept in football. Jesse's not missing a. What do you miss in football? And I'll ask that. Obviously now I know it a little bit better than I did, but when I first started, how would this work? What happens in football? You miss, you fumble, whatever. All right, someone else.
I like the way you break it down in groups, by age group too, to do some brainstorming and sharing, and then you took the guessing out of the sharing and just made it more focused on the task at hand. Really concise and would be effective.
Yeah. So there's a couple different ways. Thanks, Liz. There's a couple different ways you could do it. I do it if I have a mixed group of coaches, mixed ages. That's how I do it. I do it by age. Sometimes if you have a mixed group of coaches by sport, I've done it by sport. Let's get all the baseball coaches over here, soccer over here, because it is really neat to be able to hear in your own sport how you would handle it. I think that's really valuable as well. What I like to do, and I didn't go into it too detailed here, but what is really neat for me to see is sometimes I get the people that are coaching the older kids, and I'll have them go first, and they'll give some kind of an answer on how they'd help Jesse, and then when it goes back down to the people that are coaching like 6-year-olds, and they talk about, I want to make it fun, and I want to make sure the kid's excited to get back in the game, and I won't take them out, and I turn to the people that are coaching the older kids, and I say, how would that work? Would that be effective on your players? And they all go, yeah, that would probably work really well. And so I bring up the point, don't take the fun out of it just because they're not in elementary school anymore. Because that's what the kids need. They still need fun in their sport. They still need the excitement. They need you to be even more pumped up for them because they're being harder on themselves. I find coaching the younger kids sometimes it's hard because they come out of the game, they have no clue they made a mistake. They're just like, woohoo, that was great. That was so much fun. Like, you kicked the ball in the wrong goal, but that's okay. Let's keep going. So however you can think of to, and Liz, to the other point too, and even with you guys, when I say, okay, somebody share, it puts pressure on everyone. But when I say, even as silly as it is, you get a ball and you throw it out in the room. Sometimes I bring a beach ball. Just toss it out. Somebody will catch it. Can you share with me? Somebody whose birthday is closest to today. Someone with green eyes. Someone who thinks they traveled the farthest to get to this workshop. Oh, look at my list. And we actually have a sign-in, text to sign-in, and I can see who signed in at the workshop. And I've even done it. I actually just did this last week where I needed a volunteer and I went to text to sign in and I said, okay, who's CG8032 is your email at gmail.com. Share with me. And the guy was like, oh, yeah, okay, and just something funny randomly. If you have a baseball hat on, share. Sometimes just giving people a reason to share makes them okay, that, oh my gosh, she picked on me. I don't have to have this great answer because I was just picked on. But, you be careful about that as well because you don't want to just cold call somebody and put them on the spot. All right, what else? Yes, Mike.
When you're starting out, or from you guys' experience, you and Ruben, do the trainers who are beginners tend to go too long or too short?
What's your guess?
I would think too short.
Ruben, what do you say about that? I know what I say. Do you think they go too long?
I think they fear that they don't have enough to share and say, and they fear that they're going to be too short, and then they end up talking too much and trying to do too much, and you know, an hour and 45 minutes into the workshop, they realize they're only halfway done. So that's been my experience.
I was going to say the same thing. I find it's too long. That's why I say practice your stories and practice doing each principle. When we do this at the end of this course, I give you 20 minutes to do a principle, and I keep my stopwatch for 20 minutes, and it's amazing how many times I say, okay, you've got 2 minutes left, and they go, what? I do? Like, oh my gosh, that went so fast. The other thing you have to take into consideration, just that activity where I got everyone up and moving around the room and talking, that takes time. So when you're practicing, you have to sort of build that in. That activity where I just had everybody up, move out of their seats, share with the group, even though I only gave them 2 minutes to share, that's a good 5 minutes. That is part of the ELM Tree of Mastery principle. But I think it's so crucial. It's so valuable. That's where the concepts become real. They're talking about players, and I have them too. Think about a Jesse on your team. Who's the Jesse? And one time I said, okay, call out the name of the Jesse on your team. Go. And I mean, you hear the whole room, Brian, Tommy, Timmy, Sue, whatever their name is. Everybody's got a Jesse. Picture that child. How can you help them? And again, Mike brought up the mistake ritual, so I didn't go into it. But what I would do, and actually I forgot to totally do this, when you go through the scenario, Mike so nicely mentioned the mistake ritual. On page 23 in your book, this is where this book is so valuable. Everyone turn to page 23 in your book. Actually, I'm going to have you turn to page 21. Every chapter explains the principle that we spoke about, and then the subsequent chapter gives you tools. These are things that you can use, coaches, right away. Put them into practice. So the first one that Mike mentioned was called the mistake ritual. This is something that we borrowed from Mike Lagarza. He was one of the first that mentioned it to PCA, from Kenyatta College in California, and he used something called the flush. He uses this with his college players. I have found it extremely helpful when I even taught it to 3- and 4-year-olds. When you talk about potties and toilets, they go nuts. So if you've got a bunch of little kids and you're talking about a way for them to get mistakes and flush them down the toilet, everybody put your arm up in the air, right arm up in the air. On the count of 3, I'm going to ask you to make the loudest flushing toilet sound you've ever heard. 1, 2, 3, go. And the whole audience goes and makes a big flushing sound. And everybody starts giggling. And I always say, you think that's funny? You try to watch a bunch of 8-year-old Little League baseball players do that. They think it's great. So that's something as simple as just going, flush it, get rid of it, and move on to the next play. Okay? If you think that the flush is way too simple and elementary for your kids, talk to the Tampa Bay team, the Tampa Bay Rays, that have a toilet in their dugout that Jake Odorizzi actually showed me was in the dugout. And when they have a bad hit or they make an error, they go into the dugout, they hit the button, it makes a flushing noise, and they move on to the next play. This is Major League Baseball. So it works at every level. I've heard other teams, especially girls teams, they wear the ponytails, the elastics on their wrist, they snap it. They say snap out of it. I coach 12-year-old girls. Taylor Swift is like their idol. Shake It Off was the biggest song ever. So last year our mistake ritual was to shake it off. And I had it on our warm-up song was Shake It Off, and they'd all sit there and shake it off. So that became our mistake ritual. When you made a mistake, we'd all just shake our hands and say, hey, shake it off, Laura, whatever you need to do. So the other one other tool that I personally like, and remember I asked you in the question this week to come up with 2. Mistake ritual is one that I like everyone to share. I love effort goals, and I sort of touched on that in the beginning when I was talking about when I was pressing Mike, and I like to challenge people that give answers. A lot of times people say, well, this is my answer I would give, and Mike, not to pick on you, but this is the answer to give. I wanted you to be specific. Coaches need specific language with kids. Don't just tell me, well, let's think about what you did well. Be specific. Well, you had good follow-through. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. You had good hustle. Good. Make it specific. So effort goals is one that I love, and I would have everyone turn to page 25 in the book, because we as coaches do goal setting. Some of you at the high school and college level, you do lots of goal setting. I was doing goal setting as well. I just wasn't setting the right goals. I was setting outcome goals. So on the top of page 25, you'll see an outcome goal is, for a baseball or softball example, beat the throw to first base. That's what we want everyone to do. However, the effort goal is run hard through first base on a grounder. What do the kids have control over? Can every single kid make it? Beat the throw to first base? No. No matter how fast he runs or she runs, they're not always going to beat it. But can every single player on your team run hard through first base? Yes. That's what tells you if it's a good effort goal or not. Do they have control of it? And then there's the other examples. If you have time, you can read through them. So I personally always share effort goals, and I always share the mistake ritual. But whatever tools that you like to use, please share them, because that makes it real to you. All right. Other comments, questions? Who haven't I heard from yet? I haven't heard from Terry and company. Terry and friend there. Terry and son, I think.
Hey guys, yeah, this is Cooper.
Hi Cooper, how are you?
Good.
Good. Thanks for joining us. All right, Terry, what are one of the tools that you like that you would probably share?
Yeah, again, I like the, I'm a predominantly baseball coach, and the bouncing back from mistakes is just huge. I primarily make it come, and the one thing about pitchers is when their mindset is just thinking doom and gloom, it's usually never turning out very well. We're very much trying to devise always succeeds. Things like that. It just gets them in a great mindset. Throwing the first a first pitch strike, a first pitch outside, first pitch inside, something.
I think we have a bad connection, Terry. Sorry. I think you're kind of going in and out.
Just going to that right mindset, but it's always.
I think we're losing him. We caught half of that. I caught part of what you were saying there. Was he going in and out for everybody else too, or was it just me? Okay, everybody else. Yeah, I think we had a kind of a weak connection there. Sorry. But I think baseball is a really great example of where, mistake ritual and rewarding unsuccessful effort is really big. Another question that I wrote down that I loved, that another one of our trainers did in the course, after the videos, she said very simply, which coach would you rather play for? And I thought that was a really neat discussion topic too, to just talk about who would you perform best for? And then she brought up the point that, does fear motivate? Is fear a great motivator? Absolutely. Fear it demands a quick response, and it's human nature. When you're fearful or you're scared, it's fight or flight. And a lot of times in sports, that's what you need. You need that quick adrenaline rush. But what's the downside of using fear as a motivator? Who can answer that question for me? What is the downside of using fear?
That adrenaline rush can create tension, and then you don't execute as well.
Exactly. Go ahead, Laura.
It's not as sustainable. Like it may work in that one moment, but long term it's going to wear.
Exactly. And even contributors, as again I said, this is backed by research. Dr. Barbara Erickson and Mary Fry, who are two of our national board advisory members, have talked about the power of positivity in business as well. And using fear as a motivator and negative comments to motivate a team actually impedes performance, just because you don't have a reaction time. The reaction time slows down. You don't have the clear thinking. And if you're just talking about simple skills in a sport, clear thinking and reaction time are two of probably the most important skills across the board in any sport. So we don't want to impede that at all. I was going to pick on Coach Hawk, but he seems to have disappeared, so I'm not going to pick on him. All right, guys, well, I really thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you taking the time out for these Hangouts. I hope you're getting as much out of it as I am. I really want you to make this your own. I really want you to go through these slides again, if you do have a chance while it's fresh in your mind, and really think about how would you convey this. This is about performance, but it's also about changing a culture to a positive culture where coaches are not focusing on the outcome. Unfortunately, we've got it ingrained in our brains that the outcome is what's most important. And so this is a hard concept to get across to coaches, and it's very, very important. Next week, we're going to be talking about filling the emotional tanks. Thanks, Ruben, for reminding me of that. Filling the emotional tank week is going to be a little bit different because it's the shortest amount of slides. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, that's it, 5. That's it for filling the emotional tank, 5 slides. And I'm going to send you the link to a pre-recorded Hangout that I did from the last course. You're going to get to watch the pre-recorded Hangout of how I go through those slides, and then you are going to have a chance to show us how you would present these slides. So next week is a little bit different than the traditional Hangout. The Hangout time slots will be the same, and we're going to get probably 3 of you at each time slot to share a little demo of, you're going to have 10 minutes just to share how would you do the ELM Tree or the filling the emotional tank principle, and we're going to give you some feedback. But obviously there's 35 of you in this course, and we only do 3 Hangouts. So I'm going to have some other time blocks during the day and some evenings where we're going to be able to share. We're going to get 3 more people in an hour, and you're going to get to share. And this is something I would encourage. We do want all of you to have a chance to do, because we don't want you to wait to the end to do the mock workshop where you have to do 20 minutes at the end. This is a chance for you to demonstrate. I will have the PowerPoint up, so you don't have to worry about that, but it will start with this slide right here. Oops, right here. Which car would you rather be driving slide. So that is the assignment for next week. You'll see it in the announcement on Monday. Ruben, question?
I just wanted to put in a pitch, a plug, that, you know, the stuff that Kelly takes us through is fantastic. It's so helpful. In my opinion, the most important thing in the course through week 4 is when you practice facilitating the 10-minute piece. To me, that is the most important part of the course so far. And so I really encourage you to take advantage of that. You know, are you going to be nervous? Probably. Is it going to be awkward trying to do what Kelly does, talking into the computer? Yeah, I'm finding that out because I'm, you know, doing these sessions this time like Kelly does, you know. But there's no doubt in my mind that it's just super valuable. So take full advantage.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do next week is I'll send out, in the announcements, I'm going to send out a sign-in sheet, and you can just pick a time that works for your schedule. I'm actually presenting a couple workshops next week, so my time blocks are going to be big, but they might not be the same time as everyone else, as the regular Hangouts, but we'll let you know. If you have any questions about that, let me know. Thanks, guys. I went 3 minutes over. I apologize. If anyone has any questions, I'll hang out for a couple minutes. If not, good night, good afternoon, good evening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Yep. And feel free to join Ruben in an hour if you want to see him do it.
Hey, Kelly.
Yes.